this week's Whiteboard Leadership Moment, I want to talk about evaluating your weekend service. We talked about the walkthrough in a previous whiteboard, but that's before the service. Now, after the service, how can we reflect and celebrate what God has done? So in this meeting, we evaluate the service to celebrate and to improve. Typically, it's in the office or home. It's on Monday or Tuesday, so it's after the service. Some pastors take Monday off because they're so exhausted, so Tuesday morning would be a great time to have this meeting when they're refreshed and ready for the next week. And it gives the rest of the team time to do part of the responsibilities that come up in this meeting. How long and how often? It's 1 hour, it's weekly. 1 hour weekly, that's all it's going to take. After a while, you get used to this and you get used to the rhythm, and you really can accomplish it in an hour or less. And then who's in there? Well, the weekend service ministry leaders. This would involve the worship leader, the creative arts director, or whoever's overseeing the service as a whole, the speaker for this week as well as for the coming week. Those kind of people would be in the room. It's a small group. Typically, it's 4 to 5 people that would be in the room. And what to do? The first thing to do, take the first 15 minutes and just celebrate. Celebrate what God did. Talk about the stories of life change, the new people that showed up, the people that came up and gave you comments about what they appreciated about the service. It's so important to celebrate what God is doing. If you're preaching the gospel, if you're being faithful, God is doing a work. I guarantee it. God is doing a work in your church. You've got to celebrate those things, those moments that God gives you to celebrate. And maybe you could read some emails that came in or communication cards that came in, but some way to celebrate what God is doing to create the environment saying we're not just improving, we're celebrating what God is already at work in doing. Second, evaluate the weekend. The 4 questions we would always ask: was Christ central? Were vision and values on display? Were people challenged to take a step? And the last one, were there any cringe moments? What needs to change? What can't happen? Here's what we found is we'd have these meetings and we would start talking about the same thing over and over again that needed to change. It was the usher that got up at the end of the service in the very front row and walked to the back and was a distraction, and it happened 3 weeks in a row. When something happens 3 weeks in a row, you know that someone has to have a conversation. Someone actually has to tell that person, you can't do that anymore. Or if there's a certain singer that sings and isn't really a singer, and it happens over and over again, and you've started turning off the microphone to them, things like that. That's something that leadership has to step in and have the courage to have the hard conversation. You can be a worshiper without being a good singer, and it's two different things, but you have to make the evaluation and talk about those different elements. Make sure that the cringe factors are disappearing so you get better and better. You're focusing on authenticity and excellence in the life of your congregation. Then third, finalize the elements for the coming week. Make sure that you have the final elements that are there, and these are the things that we're going to do. You kind of walk through, and you're going to finalize the nuances, the small things that need to happen in order for you to move forward with next week's service and get prepared for the walkthrough that's going to happen on the weekend. And then finally, create a punch list for 2 weeks out. See, this is where you get really smart, is you're planning services 2 weeks out. So it gives the worship leader time to make sure if they need to make adjustments to the songs they're singing because of what you're preaching on, things like that. You give them time, you give the team time. It's just a smart way to go about it. And when you do this week in and week out, or week after week, you're evaluating, you're celebrating, God will give you just a stronger team, greater clarity, better energy, and a better service. This has been a Converge Whiteboard Leadership Moment. To learn more about Converge or to join us, check out converge.org.